You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Join us and unwind with a good book. Welcome to Relaxing Reads.
Hi, I'm Deb in Halifax.
And I'm Tanya in Edmonton.
And I'm Simone in Vancouver.
Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens gives us mystery, romance, loneliness, and beauty. For years, rumors of the Marsh Girl haunted Barkley Cove, a quiet fishing village on the North Carolina coast. Kaya Clark is barefoot and wild, unfit for polite society. So in late 1969, when the popular Chase Andrews is found dead, locals immediately suspect her. But Kaya is not what they say. A born naturalist with just one day of school, she takes life's lessons from the land, learning the real ways of the world from the dishonest signals of fireflies. But while she has the skills to live in solitude forever, the time comes when she yearns to be touched and loved. Drawn to two young men who are each intrigued by her wild beauty, Kaya opens herself to a new and startling world. Until the unthinkable happens. So, we have a lot of emotions, ladies. What were your first thoughts? Tanya, let's start with you.
Oh, well, as I'm reading it, I just, that the feeling of abandonment that comes to her, when her brother and her two sisters leave, and then her mother leaves, and then finally Jody, the brother closest to her, leaves. It's just like it just wants to rip your heart out, and it's just that kind of heartbreaking loneliness that she must have felt, which I think we can all kind of identify with in some respects of being lonely at times, but this is on a whole other level. And that's what I really took away, was just this little girl, 6 years old, and she's left with, a dad who's a drunk, basically, and everybody has left, and how, where do you go from there? So I just thought, that abandonment really was just something that really got me.
Yeah. How about you, Simone?
I would have to agree with that. I also started reading this book, I want to say about a year and a half ago, and I got a copy of it, and I was going through it, and it was during the pandemic when many of us were facing like isolation and going periods without seeing people. And there was just a part of me that couldn't get into it. Like, I felt all those feelings, like it was really hard to read about that. And then I just didn't feel as connected to the story. And I got to, I want to say like 100 pages. But then when we chose this for the book club and I gave it a second go, now that it's, it became a major motion picture, I was like, you know what? Like, there's been so many great reviews about this. Not sure why I didn't get into it. And then I picked it up this time, and I don't know what it was. Maybe there was a better focus for me. But once I think you excel past that first little bit, because it is really sad, and if you're looking for something uplifting and you're not getting it, you might not make it past those pages. But once I continued, wow, this book really gripped me. Like, from that point onwards, like, I was hooked. The middle into the end, I couldn't put it down. So I think you just got to get past that first little bit if you're someone who often likes lighter reads and things like that, because there are a lot of heavy topics in the beginning. Not that they get any easier near the end, but I think once you get through that hump, it really changes things. And this book just, gears forward quickly.
Yeah. I'm the same with you, although it wasn't about a year or so ago. For me, it was just recently. It took me a few tries. I picked it up a few times, and there were other things going on. But once I got into it, I thought, oh, this young girl, wow, she's got these, heavy things going on in her life at such a young age. And And I thought that not only everything that's going on around her, but nature as, the backdrop of where she's living became a character, which it sometimes does in a lot of books, a lot of stories. But this backdrop, this part of nature was something incredible. So I felt really attached to it, more so than I thought I would. And then there were so many things unraveling. I think it's been one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same for me.
So the author has said Kaya is every little girl and one in a million. She is all of us. Did you identify with her in any way? Simone, we'll start with you.
I mean, there were not a lot of things I could say I would identify with her. I mean, I didn't grow up alone in a marsh, but the part I did kind of relate to was just that whole vibe of, being different and going to school. Like me growing up South Asian, there wasn't a lot of South Asian people in my school when I was younger. So it was a little bit of that when she would go in and, people would laugh at her and kind of giggle and snicker and she didn't know a lot. Like that part of it, that little part of being younger and being bullied or not feeling quite comfortable, that part I definitely related to. Never actually was in a love triangle. Would have been nice to relate to some of that a little later, but I'd say
absolutely
that was kind of it for me when it came to her character.
How about you, Tanya?
Yeah, I think, I'm like Simone. I didn't grow up in a marsh, but I certainly, I think, for me being going to a rural school and my friend and I were always different, like we listened to different music. We were just sort of the outcast. So I could kind of relate to her in terms of, not really fitting in school and people looking at you like you're the strange bird from far off land. And it's just, anyway, yeah, I could relate to that. But I could, we were like goths before, my goodness, before anybody knew what that was. It's like, give them right away. We don't want to talk to them. But, and I also felt sort of, as she got older and, she became so self-reliant and she became almost so closed off where I'm not going to let anybody in because it ends up in disappointment and pain. And the only one I can actually depend on is me. And, there have been periods of my life that I have gone through kind of, not to that extreme, of course, but being sort of like, you know what, if I want to get anything done, I'm going to do it myself, or I'm not going to bother someone, So I have been through those kinds of feelings. So I did relate with that, just being like, what happens though is you close yourself off, and you got to get out of that. But yeah, I totally got that sort of like, it's just me. I'm just going to, persevere and pull through and nobody's going to hurt me, and I have felt that at periods of my life.
Yeah, I also did not grow up in a swamp. However, I have traipsed through many. But I actually did feel some sort of a connection, and I felt like, oh my goodness, there's a little bit of little Deborah in her. And I think because I felt like I had a lot of friends, a lot of different circles of friends growing up, but also felt a little lonely at times, even though I had great friendships and great family and wonderful people I was surrounded by. But I don't know. I've always thought I'm a little quirky and I'm a little over here sometimes. I can come back to this circle, but I'm really okay on my own. And if I'm going to be alone, then, hey, I can do this. And I think as she has proven that you can do a lot more than you believe sometimes in yourself. And do I really need that group of people? Do I need to be part of whatever they've got going on and believe that to be the all and end all? But I also think that I was feeling connected or somehow with her identity because little girls who become little women, there are so many pressures and so many people telling you about who you should be and what you should do that I felt there was a little bit of that with her. And boy, oh boy, I mean, if she could build on that strength or find that strength and pass it on to others, that's a pretty powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So the townspeople, both the kids and the adults, are not very kind to Kaya. They call her the Marsh Girl. She was bullied at her first day of school. She never returned. How do you feel about the town not caring for this child? Simone?
I do not like this town at all. First of all, just even with the situation, and I know these kind of things happened in the past where, colored folks are treated differently. And then, of course, this young girl who looks like the people that are, prominent in this community, she's an outcast and an outsider. It's not a very accepting place. And I don't know. It seemed like it was such a beautiful place when they, the way it was described in certain places and the beaches and that kind of thing. But I couldn't understand why only 2 people in that town were kind to her. That is, a lot of people that did not take a chance on this little girl. And you just think about, it wasn't that long ago this story was set, but now, if you would see like a little 7-year-old girl, who's wearing ratty clothing and looks unkempt, maybe you would want to go up to her and be like, "Hey, are you okay? Are your parents here?" Just in town. I know she kind of avoided it and ran away when people came close to her, but I still felt like they could have maybe tried a little bit harder to talk to her and just do that little bit more. So I really did feel like the town kind of failed getting to know her, and then they all obviously wanted to show up in the end and then be around her. So it was it was kind of odd in that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I grew up in a farming community, and so it wasn't a small town, but a farming community. And, the community is tight-knit, but it can also be very, can also put people, make people feel like they're an outcast. And I don't know what that is with the human spirit that does that, or I shouldn't even say spirit, but they do that. And I related to the town in that respect, that if you're different, they just ignore you. And that's just a hard thing to read, and it's certainly a hard thing to go through. My mom married my dad when she had 3 kids, and the community I grew up in, they never accepted her. Ever. She tried so hard, and in the end it was just you're not a Lawrence, you're not a, it's just weird. So I get that townspeople can just sort of shun people, and then that group mentality, everybody's going to do it, so I'm going to do it, except, like you said, Simone, Jumpin' and Mabel, but they were also an outcast.
Yep.
In that community as well. They had their own place, their own area that they could only live in. But the way they grabbed onto that girl and helped her, it just made my heart swell. So there are good people, just not the rest of the town.
Yeah. Yeah, so judgy. And who were they? I mean, yeah, I feel the same way, Tanya. I grew up in a rural area as well. And my goodness, if anything happened to you, they would be the first to lend a hand. But perhaps some of them in the background whispering and talking about you and where you came from, or
thinking
that
you don't belong, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, quite interesting. In the end, they all show up to see her because she's become something that they never expected her to be.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And my gosh, Jumpin' and Mabel, they were fantastic, weren't they?
When when Delia describes Mabel of wrapping her arms around this little girl, I felt like I could feel Mabel, I could feel this big woman just wrapping you up in love. And I went, oh, My goodness.
Just that comfort that she was longing for and
Comfort.
she never had in so long.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because everyone kept going.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. They all left her, her mom, her siblings. And then there was that time where Kaya and her pa were building something, some kind of a connection before, of course, he eventually left her. And what would
The
have
letter
happened?
arrived, right? And then,
Oh,
yeah.
my dear. Yeah.
I don't know, like, what would have happened? Like, I think about that had he stayed. Alcoholism is a disease. And so if he ever got that sorted out, that is an uphill battle. It's not insurmountable, but I mean, you can get there. But also in the book, her father tells her at a very young age, he says, you got to be careful of the white trash. Pretty near everybody out there is a no count. So is that a good way to bring up a little girl thinking that you don't count? Like, that's sort of what the vibe that he was giving off. So I don't know. I think she was better off not having him around.
Yeah, I'd say so too, especially when we learn to find more about him. I think in the beginning you're rooting for them to have a connection because, I just felt so bad for this little girl. Like, what are you supposed to think when you're that age and there's no guiding adult in your life? Mm-hmm. And, I was hoping for it. But when he was, not coming home and acting the way he was, I just felt she was safer on her own.
Yeah, definitely. And she absolutely proved that too, didn't she? I mean, there were a couple of moments where you thought, oh my gosh, is he coming around? Is he having a moment himself where he's recognized all of the wrongs? And then that quickly faded and that didn't go anywhere. But wow, to think about all the things she had been able to do as a child. I mean, I don't know. I could bake a little when I was her age, but I don't think I could have taken on the responsibility of an adult, all the things that she was able to do in her everyday life.
I know. It just like going to the grocery store on her own, figuring it out. And, it was amazing to see that she was able to do that.
Yeah, operating the boat.
Operating the boat. But there was one scene that kind of just a scene. I call it a scene because everything plays a movie in my mind. But when she at the very beginning, I don't know whether your mums had lard in the cupboard to make pie crusts and stuff, but it's like a white block. And there's a bit where she has crackers and she's dipping the crackers in the lard and eating it. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, I remember being little and going, that's not butter, Tanya. That's that's white. It's not butter. Doesn't taste good. I think I probably tasted it at one point. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, but when you're so young and you don't know the options and you need to eat and you're just going to kind of pull at whatever you can get.
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah. So sad.
Yeah. So I think if you can you grow up alone? Can you grow up alone in the swamp? Would you survive? I think that, as adults, I think you can definitely, sometimes you don't know what you can do until you're tested, right? It's amazing. I think sometimes it's hard for us to even think about some things of how we hear how people live or what, how they've got through some stuff. And you're like, oh, wow, I could never do that. You'd be surprised, I think, what you could do if you absolutely had to. And that's what that little girl did all the way up to 24 or whatever. She dug in and somehow survived.
That's just it.
Yeah.
It's the fight to survive. If your other option is just, dying hungry, then you're going to figure out a way. And Deb, you said operating a boat, going out, catching mussels, finding ways to make money. She just had that in her to be I'm not going to give up. I'm on my own, but I'm just going to, this is a better option for me than going to school or trying to be like the townspeople. I'm going to figure it out on my own. And she did.
Yeah.
I just think that maybe her connection with nature, where it is survival of the fittest, maybe she did she did call nature and the swamp her mother at one point. So maybe she had that. It's just no, I'm just going to do whatever it takes to survive because that's what all these critters do. That's what the birds do, the seagulls, the insect, everything, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was in her. She just somehow knew, even though, she probably took some mental notes about what was happening, with her mom. Maybe she noticed a few things along the way, and obviously with her dad too. But and I guess in impoverished areas around the world, or back in the early 1900s into the Depression, there were probably a lot of children who had to take over certain roles because they lost their families, they lost their parents, so they had to become an adult a lot sooner than anybody had hoped they would or wished they would.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tate is obviously a big character and a big part of Kaya's life. How do you feel about his discovery at the end of the novel? And did you expect it? And does it change the way that you view the rest of the story? Simone?
I did not expect that at all. That was a big surprise to me. But in a weird way, it was a pleasant surprise because, I was like, wow, she did it. She pulled it off. And she outsmarted, outwit, and outplayed everybody. And it was just one of those moments where, you were like, you knew she could do it because she's always been on her own and she's got the resources and the tools and she knows the marsh and everything better than anybody else. But at first I thought she did it. And then there was in court, I was like, nope, she didn't. And then I was like, maybe it was Tate. Maybe Tate did it. Somebody, or maybe Jumpin did it. And then when I found out that it was her, it definitely changed things for me, but in a positive way. Like I didn't hate her and I didn't think it was unjust.
Yeah,
Tanya?
I think I didn't expect it. I kind of thought it might have been Jumpin because he was the only person that she told who had hit her, right? Because he asked her about her face and he was the only person she said, yeah, it was Chase who hit me. And I thought, well, maybe there's something there. And then, Tate had the red toque or the red hat. And I thought, well, maybe he did. And then somehow ended up in her cabin. I don't know. And then, you find out towards the end. But, I didn't believe, when she was in court.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
I didn't think that she had done it. I still believed that someone else had. And then when it was revealed, I went, oh, that makes sense. Actually, it makes sense. And to what you were saying is that how she figured it out. In the courtroom drama, they went detailed, how she could have possibly done it, given that she went to that other town, and they laid it all out. And I was with them going, yeah, she never could have. But she knew the land back and forwards and sideways. And it's when it was revealed that she did, it's of course she did.
And she
of
knows,
course she did.
And she knows the tides when they come out and when they come in.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah.
And I thought her lawyer was excellent because it was you thought you saw a frame of her, but that could have been anybody's frame. And then it was the person on the bus. Did she dress up like a man? And now it's she probably did dress up like that man. Did she borrow her siblings or her dad's clothing? But it was just, this is what I'm saying. When I started this book, and I couldn't get into it. It was just a story of this sad little girl. And then once you get into all of this, this love triangle, all this nature, and we haven't even mentioned the poetry that comes to play in this book.
Yeah.
And then the courtroom drama, and wow, there's a lot to unpack in this book.
There really is. And I guess I too was surprised, but I guess, looking back, we should have known, or because she knew, and she knew nature so much better than before she ever knew people or understood people. So it does make sense that she would be able to do this and accomplish what she had set out to do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned, how poetry plays a part in this book. And that was one of the things that I was wondering about, was sort of the significance of the poems, because she found that her mom had written, and then she was reading poems, and Scupper, Tate's dad, said that poems aren't for sissies, they make you feel something. And I'm wondering, was she reading the poems because it did make her feel something? Like, what did you guys think of the poems throughout the book?
Oh, yeah. I loved it. And I loved that his dad was so into it. And can we please say how much we love Tate and
Yes.
the fact that he taught her to read. And I was so impressed with her ability to move forward, even though she really had nothing, or felt like, oh my gosh, this lonely world that I live in, how can I know and learn what's beyond what I have right here in front of me? And then this guy comes into her life, and so gentle and loving and providing, by beginning to teach her, how to read. And then the poetry came, and I don't know, I fell in love with that whole aspect, their relationship.
Yeah, I really love Tate too. And I enjoyed the poems. Obviously, the last poem in the book was my favorite. It's about the fireflies.
Yes.
The others were a nice touch. And, I'd go back and try to kind of understand what some of them meant. But I think for those who are big literary snobs, the writing in this book and the way things are, it's so descriptive and well written. I think you would enjoy that. And maybe that was another reason I didn't get into it at first, because I felt like it was almost too much for me, too much description. But once you realize where that's all coming from, and then you tie it all in, it's actually really nice. It's a nice little bow for this package.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm not, when it comes to poems, I'm not that savvy with them, because I feel I try to read them going, Tanya, seriously, just figure it out. But it just eludes me most of the time, except that last poem in the book. Amazing.
That was a winner, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the author writes a lot about the relationships between women. And Kaya's mom has said, women need one another more than they need men, but she never told her how to get into the fold. And even Mabel said that, you have to have women friends, because they just how does she say? You need your girlfriends, because the clutch of women is the most tender, most tough place on earth. And I think all of us can relate to that. When you have girlfriends, it's like you can love each other, and then you can hate each other. But in the end, we all have our backs, right? They have our backs. And I wonder, the author talks about these relationships with women and how important it is through the characters. But Ma leaves. And, and Mabel also doesn't leave, but tells her about women too. But yet she's never able to she's never able to connect with any women. I mean, certainly it's all been men. It's been Tate, her brother. She never really knew her sisters. Her mother left. Mabel is the only one who was ever kind of a figure with her. And as for the girls she saw on the beach, I mean, she just nicknamed them. But I think she always wanted to get in there, be with them, but she couldn't ever be there. So what do you think the author is trying to say? It's like, I'm going to tell you that it's important, but I'm not going to let you have it. It's weird.
Yeah. It's weird, but we are complicated beings, are we not?
Yes.
I 100% agree. Like, to have a relationship, to have girlfriends and women in your life is really, truly the most beautiful thing. There are moments where we have to step away and breathe and give each other the respect and the space. But yeah, coming back to those relationships, I felt for her, because she wasn't able to get that. But again, coming from, those women that she had in her life didn't really tell her how do you go about this, like, and invite her to, I don't know. Yeah, I love the nickname she had for those girls that she would never become part of their group, the tall, skinny blonde and the round, chubby cheeks. And
But that's just it. I think if you've never experienced it, you don't know what you're missing. Sure, people talk about it, but I think, often it's said men are more simpler than women. And she kind of lived a very simple life. And that's what she chose. She wanted to, there were times, obviously, the isolation was hard, but there were times she craved it and wanted to just be out there on her own. And with women, we want to know everything that's going on in our lives and talk about things and do things. And maybe it was too big of a commitment for her. But again, that's just it. She never had anyone to kind of tell her, and lead her into that direction. And there was nobody her age she really could connect to outside of those girls. And that never happened. So I think at the end of the day, maybe she didn't even know that she was missing something because she didn't have any experience to base that on. Like we've been lucky enough to have good groups of girlfriends or maybe siblings and our moms and things like that. But if you don't have that, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
so true. Amen,
you don't
sister.
know what you don't miss what you don't you don't miss what you don't know.
Exactly.
Sure. I like that Kaya's mom always encouraged her to go and explore the marsh. Go out as far as you can go, way out yonder where the Crawdads Sing. And then Kaya was asking Tate, like, what does that mean? And he basically said, just means far in the bush where critters are wild, still behaving like critters. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Does that just mean, did her mom just want her to just be yourself, don't be affected by anybody, live by your own rules, be one with nature? Was she somehow wanting to protect her daughter in a sense of making sure she became self-sufficient by watching the animals and the birds because she knew she was going to leave? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't know. That's a tough one. Like, obviously, as a mother, she's probably going to give her the best advice she can. But I think her situation where she left her hometown, moved away with Kaya's father, didn't really work out well. Maybe she felt like she never really got to live her life the way she had wanted and experience things how she was hoping for. And the ultimate result was her leaving because it just became too tough. So maybe for her daughter, it's some of those, like have the strength to find your independence, find who you are, and be happy in the company of yourself, because then you'll be better able to kind of make those decisions for you and not base it on, I am doing this to make somebody else happy or for them. You're choosing your own happiness. So I think there was maybe a tie in there because the mom was miserable, and maybe it was like she would see her daughter go out and enjoy the marsh and spend time there. So it was a way of her just being like, find a place that's just where you can just truly be happy. And that's where Kaya was happiest.
Well said. Yeah,
I think you're right.
Exactly that.
Some of us like, wine on the beach.
Some of us like boating in the marshes.
In the marsh, right?
Just find your happiness.
I'll go to the beach.
And I think, we've all come out of long stretches of isolation through the pandemic. So it's like now we can actually make those decisions of what does truly make you happy. Surround yourself with the people you want to give your time to and be around. Like if there's anyone who brings an energy you don't like, just say no. I don't want to go out. I want to take some time for me and just, give yourself the gift of enjoying your life and doing what you want to do.
Don't be afraid.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid. Yes.
Well, all in all, I really enjoyed this book, so I'm glad I went back to it a second time. I think it's a great novel to explore and read, and I'm really looking forward to the movie that's in theaters now.
So am I, and actually, I hadn't finished the book by the time the movie went out, and I thought, Tanya, do not go to the movie, and I didn't. I waited, and now I want to go see the movie because I want to see who they cast as all of the characters. It's always a fun thing when a book is being made into a movie. So it's definitely a great summer read. And I think the movie promises to be pretty awesome as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, lovely chatting with you both. Until next time, we'll chat soon.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for kicking back and relaxing with us. We hope you'll join us again on Relaxing Reads.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.